welcome to my recap review of Ready to Love. My name is Deborah. Welcome to my video. And today we're going to be discussing the latest episode of Ready to Love. And just like we did last week, we're going to go through these dates because that's the format I like the most, because I like to talk about the dates because that's where we learned about people. And this week, we had two new things that went on. We had a no elimination. We didn't even have a separate ladies' lounge or men's lounge. We had a group lounge, which caused for some interesting conversation. And we had our S-Curl man come back. Andre's back, y'all. Andre's back. S-Curl is back. And he has added a little, just like me, he got a little ponytail here on the top. He said COVID is gone. And the supply chain is better on the S-Curl. And he was able to get that redone. So Andre is back, and he got a couple of people nervous that he's coming back. But we'll talk about that later on towards the end of the video as well, because it happened towards the end of the show. But first, we want to talk about this first date. It was a group date. It was a group date between, who was there? Mercedes, Cynthia, SueAnn, Blake, Lyndon, and Anthony. And it was a fun date. They went on this obstacle course to show they fun side of each other. I was happy to see Mercedes having some fun, because a lot of times I think Mercedes is kind of serious. But Mercedes got her braids out, and so she had her new hairstyle, which was like a press, a hard press. And she was like, shoot, this water gonna mess up my new press and curl, whatever you want to call it. What you call it now? They ain't called press and curl. I'm old. Back in the day, we called them a press and curls. Now it's not even called flat iron. I forget what it's called. But she was like, all this running around and sweat is going to mess up my new hairdo. But she didn't let it stop her. She put a hat on and she said, let's keep it moving. Good for you, Mercedes. Don't let no hair stop you from having fun. But they had a water gun fight. It was fun. They said Cynthia is a competitive. She said she is competitive. She wanted to win. And then they broke off on all these sort of little individual dates. And so one of the first individual dates that happened was between Anthony and Mercedes. So the first breakoff date was between Anthony and Mercedes, and they got to talk. And basically, Mercedes tried to give Anthony the good letdown. She's like, well, based on our last conversation, you got a lot of needs, a lot of requirements. And the role that you have in your life is a big job to fill. And I don't quite know if I'm able to fill that role. That's a big learning quality. That was a good answer how to tell somebody, yeah, I know you got a job opening, but I don't want the job, but I don't want to put you down. Mercedes ain't trying to be Anthony's girl. Not at all. Not at all. She was like, your life's too regimented. You looking for somebody to come in and help you with these kids. And she's like, I've done none of those things. I don't have the skill set. I'm not qualified. And Anthony was like, well, I could teach you. I could teach you. She's like, oh, yeah, I don't know. But the learning curve is long. It's long. It's going to take me a long time to learn those things. She was doing everything she could to get fired. What's the new term out here? A quiet quitting. Quiet firing. Mercedes was like, please don't hire me for this job. Please don't hire me for this job. Mercedes is not interested in Anthony at all. So the next day we end up seeing is between Lyndon and Susu. And I don't even know if you could call this a date at all. This is more like we just wrapping it up, closing this out, letting each other know for sure this is going nowhere. I guess supposedly in the beginning of the season, SueAnn gave Lyndon her telephone number, and Lyndon never called her. And then Lyndon finally started calling her, and she would return none of the text or calls. Because she's like, it took you so long. Lyndon only started calling because he's been getting the friend zone from everybody. Everyone is friend zoning Lyndon. I tell you, I like Lyndon, but he does give you a friend zone vibes. He really does seem like the guy you can hang out with, have a good time, you can laugh. He has some of the best conversation of all the men. I really do enjoy Lyndon's conversation. He's fun. He's funny. If I'm in Miami, Lyndon, can I come hang out with you? What bar are you at? Because I want to come and hang out at your bar because I know it's fun and I know he's fun. But people just want to put him in the friend zone. If he's really going to want to get serious with a woman, and he's really serious about wanting to settle down, maybe have a family or whatever, he's going to have to do a few more things to make him seem a little bit more mature. And the first is going to be a moving out of that apartment with his brother. I know he's probably saving money, saving rent. I know it's probably maybe, maybe something is cultural. They do that. So I'm not gonna say it's because he's broke. It just may be what he's comfortable with. But sometimes you have to make sacrifices to go to the next level. And I'm telling you, this living with his brother or whomever, roommate situation, is not going to allow him to take any woman to the next level, because women don't want, they want to see that a man is able to stand on his own 2 feet before they can really take him seriously. We can hang out with you. We can go to the club. We can sit at the bar. We can have fun. We can laugh. We can come over your house and kick it. But we just won't see you as a person who we would want to put in charge of our household. We want to see you kind of running the household before we think you can run our household. So Lyndon, you in the friend zone pretty much with everyone, but you're going to need to sort of get out of that and get your own place. That's the first step, a basic first step. Because then when Lyndon had this next date, he had a next one-on-one date with Mercedes. Lyndon is keeping it rolling. He is through the rotation. And then he had a date with Mercedes, and she said the same thing, a friend zone. Friend zone, friend zone, friend zone. She didn't even waste her time giving him a quiet quitting like she did with Anthony. She just basically said, no, you're in the friend zone, period. She didn't even give him no politically correct answer. She didn't waste any time whatsoever. But she smiled while she said it. She was nice. But basically, Lyndon got in the friend zone with Mercedes too. I don't know what Lyndon's going to do. Pretty much now, the only person he got is Morgan. That's it. Then we had this date with Blake and SueAnn, and they had this awkward kiss. I tell you, Blake sure knows how to ask questions. He definitely is in security, and he has used to interrogating people. Because I'm starting to see now that Blake doesn't give up information. He just asks a lot of questions. One of the things that whatever happened with Jeffri and him, she talks about how he would ask her a lot of questions, and how that made her feel uncomfortable. I actually think this is just part of who Blake is. Blake loves to ask questions. It's his style. Even when he had the thing with Jeffri and he was like, well, tell me what you said. She's like, well, no, tell me what you heard. No, Blake is more comfortable with asking questions than he is revealing what's inside of him. He's very, very closed off. So even on this date with SueAnn, he says, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Question number 1. As opposed to saying, I want to be your boyfriend, question number 1 is, do you have a boyfriend? That gets her in the position to have to say what she wants, reveal her needs, her wants, her desires, and he doesn't have to reveal anything about his own emotions. Do you want a boyfriend? That was question number 1. Question number 2, what are you looking for in a man? Well, what are you looking for in a woman? I'm telling you, he loves to ask questions. What are you looking for a man? So she got to come over. Oh, strong back, good heart. Once again, she's revealing all these things about herself, and we still don't know what he is looking for in a woman. And we also don't know, does he have a girlfriend? But he getting all this information from SueAnn, all of this information. So that was question number 2. What do you want? What you looking for? Question number 3. I see you talking to a lot of men, and they all say you have a lot of conversation with them, but you don't have a lot of conversation with me. What's that about? That's question number 3. And SueAnn's like, well, you talk to other women. What are you talking about? She's trying to flip it on, but he don't answer her questions. He is much more comfortable with asking the questions and not answering them. This guy. So then she gets up and she goes over and sits on his lap. She makes another move, another assertive move, and goes over and sits on his lap. And he says, oh, well, it looks like you came over here because you want something. Is that a question, Blake? Is that another question? Are you asking me what I want? Instead of saying, I'm glad you came over here to kiss me because that makes me feel good. That makes me close to you. I might want to kiss you. Or why don't you say something, Blake? Why don't you make a move towards me? Tell me something sweet. Why are you always waiting on me to make the first move and say the first thing? Anyway, she said, oh, yeah, I thought you was coming over here. You must be coming over here looking for something. And then they lean in and it's like, ooh, I don't know. It wasn't sexy to me, y'all. How about to you? It wasn't a sexy kiss to me at all. And then the last question, he says, oh, you must like me. Another question, why don't you say something like that was a nice kiss? I really like you. Another question for me, oh, you must like me. This man is giving nothing. That's why he can sit up later on and say, I didn't say that. I believe him. I don't believe he said any of those things to Jeffri because he doesn't say stuff like that. If you look at Blake's style, Blake does not say things like that. He asks a bunch of questions. Period. That's what he does. He asks questions. He doesn't speak. He asks questions. So the part about was he interrogating her, where you been, what you doing, who you talking to, I believe all that. I believe he did all that. But all that talking that Jeffri said Blake does, spilling his guts, saying you the woman I want, I only want to be with you. I don't believe in none of it, because that's not how Blake rolls. Blake should have said in that little group setting later on, I didn't say that all that stuff, because I don't say that stuff to anyone. Blake don't even talk like that. He asks questions. He doesn't speak. I don't believe Jeffri. I don't believe Jeffri's whole story, because I don't see that's how Blake operates with anyone. Because his final question was to Sue, what does this final journey look like with us? What does this journey look like? Well, why don't you tell me what the journey looks like? Why don't you tell me the roadmap you're preparing for us, where we're going, what we should be doing? Why I need to lay it out? That's what I'm saying. I don't believe Jeffri. I don't believe all the story of Jeffri, because this is not how Blake operates. Blake doesn't divulge his feelings. He doesn't let it out there. He likes to prompt you for your feelings and ask you a bunch of questions and barrage you with a bunch of questions. That's what he does. He is corporate security. He's an interrogator. He is not a person who divulges information about himself or his feelings. So I don't believe Jeffri on that accord. I don't. Then we went on this next date with Bluu and Jeffri, and Jeffri shows up in her yoga pants again. Does Jeffri only wear yoga pants? It seems like all the time Jeffri is looking like she's about to go work out. Anyway, so Jeffri came in her yoga pants, and she had a date with Bluu, and Bluu, y'all, you know, it really is the person that Jeffri needs. Jeffri really does need a man like Bluu, because Bluu is so chill. But I know that Bluu isn't assertive enough for Jeffri. This is what Jeffri keeps talking about. She needs him to be more assertive. She needs him to make the first move. She wants a man that chases her. That is for sure. Jeffri likes to be chased. That is for sure. And nothing is wrong with that. And I think a man should chase women. So Jeffri is, I go where the honey is. And that's what she told Bluu. She says, you should have seen by now that I go where the gas is. Jeffri's like, if you're not bringing no smoke my way, I'm not leaning your way. And I can flip-flop back and forth anytime I want to. I can go from DeMario to Mark Anthony. I can go from Mark Anthony to you. And then when Andre came back, Jeffri sat up there and said, I couldn't stop thinking about Andre. I said, what, Jeffri? You've been all up underneath Mark Anthony. Now you're telling me that all this time that the S-Curl man has been away, you couldn't stop thinking about him? I'm telling you, somebody in my comments last week called Jeffri the man collector. Jeffri definitely is a man collector. If she could, she would line them all up, all the men up, and wind them all up and use one of them at a time. This one over here, this one over here, this one over here. She is a man collector, and she has developed some really good skills and techniques to collect those men. Talk about bone collectors. Jeffri has learned some really good techniques to catch men in her web over the years. But something goes wrong once they get in that web. Something goes wrong. Jeffri said that when she was dating, she said she doesn't want a man with kids, but even though she got 3 kids. Jeffri was saying before, you know, she used to have all these rules. She didn't want to date a man with 3 kids, but that caused her to have to give birth to her kids all alone. I'm telling you, what Jeffri does and what Jeffri says and what Jeffri does are 2 different things. That's why this nasally voice, this sweet talk, this idea that she will be really submissive to a man and that she really needs a strong man to be a leader, I'm not buying it. Jeffri is the leader. Jeffri is a leader. So she ropes men in on a false premise. This is probably why her relationships go bad, because she pretends to be one woman, but once she gets inside of the relationship, she probably actually is a very demanding woman, because even in talking to Bluu, in a lot of ways, she's telling him what she wants, which is good. I think she's trying to encourage it, but she also isn't recognizing that that's not who Bluu is. So she's telling Bluu that if you want me, you need to be a different type of person, which is good. But then I'm thinking that later on, she's going to want the reins back. She is going to want the reins back. Jeffri is a leader. Jeffri is not a follower. She is a leader. And she thinks she wants a strong-minded man, but she really, really doesn't. She really needs a man who is going to be more laid back, like the Blues of the world, who won't get all riled up when she starts with her demands and her back talk, because she's a back talker. She talks back to Blake and she talks back to SueAnn in times when she doesn't even need to. She's a back talker. I could tell. And she asks all the right questions. She's just like Blake. This is why she and Blake, they didn't get along, because they kind of have the same style. So Jeffri starts talking to Bluu, saying, where do you see me fitting into your life? So she puts it on him, draw the roadmap, which is good. And then what she can do is she can tailor fit herself to fit the role that he's looking for. It's actually a perfect way to do that. It's like, if you're going for a job interview, one of the best things you can ask the job interviewer is, what type of candidate are you looking for? And when you get them to reveal what type of candidate they're looking for, then you become that candidate. See, a lot of people come into job interviews and they just start talking about who they are without knowing who is the job looking for. That's the mistake. You see, what Jeffri does is, who are you looking for, Bluu? Where do you see me fitting yourself in? What do you need? And then what Jeffri does is she becomes that person. But it's really not who Jeffri is. That's why I keep telling you, a Jeffri can't be for Bluu, Mark Anthony, and be for Andre too. All of these men are three different men. How can Jeffri be a perfect fit for Bluu, Mark Anthony, and Blake? Not Blake. How can she be a perfect fit for Bluu, Mark Anthony, and Andre when all these men are different? Let me tell you, Jeffri's learning how I'm going to get in where I fit in. Let me find out what these men want, and I'm going to become that person. But it's not really me. Once I get them in my web, then I can be what I want to be. That's why when these men try to start leading her in a certain direction and pushing and pulling her, she goes, oh, you trying to control me. Stop trying to control me. This girl, she's a professional. She is a professional. Like I told you, she's a professional, and she's working Bluu over in this date. But Bluu said, I like to go slow because I need time to learn the do's and the don'ts. I don't know if he was talking about his do's and don'ts or her do's and don'ts. I don't know. But Blake was saying, I'm sorry, but Bluu was saying, I'm a thinker. I'm a thinker. My stuff is real. I'm not just doing stuff to be doing stuff. I really want to figure it out. He's thinking, he's trying to figure out Jeffri himself right now. But he got a little bit more assertive, grabbed her hand, sat next to her, and he says, oh, I can come for you. I can come for you. And he was saying, but when I start coming for you, just don't fold on me. She might fold on you, Bluu. She might fold on you because if somebody else is giving her more gas over here, she would definitely fold on you. What you're sensing, Bluu and Jeffri, is absolutely true. And she basically said it. She goes where the gas is. She's not made for one man. She goes for where the gas is. She's telling you the truth. The next date was with Lyndon and Morgan. And I was like, you know what? I'm starting to learn a little bit more with Morgan. Morgan got game. Last week, and I still like Morgan. I think Morgan is one of the most beautiful women on this show. And the last week, one of the things I had pointed out with Morgan was I didn't understand how the church lady was going after the biggest player on the show, which I feel is Tony the Tiger. She even calls him Tony the Tiger. And then she was also going after, say, Lyndon, who I felt was like, I don't know, is he a booty call? That's what people put him in the friend zone. Friend zone is just a booty call. Same thing. You my booty call, you my friend. Friends with benefits. It's the same category. But the more I look at Morgan, I say, oh, look at Morgan. Morgan has a lot of dating techniques that you would sometimes say a man have, to be honest with you. So I remember a couple of episodes ago when they were playing that game on the ship, and it was like, it wasn't the truth or dare, but it was that, oh, go do this, go do that. One of the things that Morgan did real smooth with Tony was because Tony didn't claim her all the way in that game. If you remember, I forget the details of it, but because he didn't stake his claim on her and say she was his number one, when it came time for her to say who she liked the most, she left Tony completely out of the mix. She sent him a message. She said, let me tell you something. I'm not going to be continually be all up under you. You're going to have to come for me and be aggressive and assertive. And you don't get the job without doing the work. And she put Tony on notice. I thought it was a bold move, but I thought it was a good move when she did it. And I thought it was a bold move. And so I really liked it. I was like, I have no problem with it. But now as I watch Morgan, and I was watching this date with her with Lyndon, and she was talking about how she's never been in love. And I'm telling you, if you guys watch any of my reviews with people, when I meet a person who's in their 30s or whatever, I say, you've never been in love. I'm not talking about You've never been in love and had your heart broken. You never went out on the ledge and fell in love with a guy even though he wasn't worthy of your love. I'm not talking about, I mean, you never had a love that went bad, nothing. So then she said she dated a guy for a year and a half and she never loved him. I said, wow, how can you stay in a relationship for a year and a half and never love the person? I was like, wow, that's interesting. And so she said she never loved him. It's hard to love someone that you don't trust. And then I thought, well, wow. So most people, you fall in love because you trust them, and then eventually you stop trusting them and you fall out of love. But she's saying, I never fell in love with him because I never trusted him, which means that begs to ask me, well, how did you even be with him if for a year and a half you didn't trust him or you didn't love him? What were you there for? And that reminds me of men who date women who don't love the women and who never want to marry the women, but they're able to just date them. You see that a lot with men. Men are able to go out with women, be boyfriend and girlfriend. They're not really in love with the women. They're not going to marry the women, and they just waste the women's time. And the women think the men are in love with them because the men are there. And here you have Morgan telling the same story, that she was there for a year and a half, but she didn't trust him and she didn't love him. And I thought, wow. Then I see Morgan, when she goes out with Lyndon, she's like, oh, you look good. You look real good. And I was like, oh, wow. Morgan is assertive. She's aggressive. And it's one of the things that Tony likes about Morgan. He talks about how Morgan is assertive. She's aggressive. She goes after what she wants. And later on in the date, we see how Tony says Marcia is not as aggressive as Marcia is not as aggressive as Morgan. So Morgan has a lot of assertive, aggressive qualities to her. And she actually, she compliments men. She compliments Lyndon. And she says a lot of sweet things to him. But in back of my head, I still believe she's also using Lyndon to make a Tony jealous. I really do believe it. And she's flirting with Lyndon and she's egging him on, even though the man she really wants is Tony. And that also reminds me of what men do. They really want this woman over here, but then they set up this side chick. It's almost like Morgan is setting up Lyndon to be her side piece. It is so interesting to watch. Does she like Lyndon? Yes. But is she looking at Lyndon as being the main one? No. She's looking at Lyndon as being the backup piece, the side piece, and the main guy she wants is Tony. It is so very interesting. Morgan knows how to hunt. She knows how to hunt just like men know how to hunt. Morgan and Tony might be the same people. And might be what's intriguing them about each other. They might be really intrigued about each other because they are each other's match. The question will be that if they end up getting together, will they both do what they normally do? And that is, after they devour each other, will they still be interested? I said that about Tony last week. After he devours Morgan, will he still be interested? And now I'm actually going to ask that question about Morgan. After Morgan captures Tony, because let me tell you, she is setting up a trap for Tony. After she captures him, will she still be interested? The girl that has never been in love. Is this also a quest for Morgan? I'm starting to see something that it might be. I'm not going to say it is. They both start off on this religious tip. But the way they're moving like they are in a hunt. Morgan is in a hunt and Tony is in a hunt. And I really want to know what happens when they capture each other. Will that energy keep them excited in the relationship, or will that energy make them go out later and go elsewhere? I don't know. It's getting really interesting to watch, though, y'all. It is getting really interesting to watch. And then we have the next date with Tony and Marcia, and all he's talking about is Marcia can't live up to Morgan. That's basically what he was saying. He was like, her energy, her hunt ain't nowhere near Morgan. He was basically saying Morgan is 10 times better than Marcia. And when Marcia was asking, well, where do I stand in your pecking order? And Tony was like, I can't lie, you number 2. Marcia was mad, but he was honest. He said, you are number 2 behind Morgan, because Morgan's game is strong. It is strong. And what he was saying was, you know what? I don't mind hunting, but I like to be hunted too. And Marcia, you're going to need to learn how to hunt. Marcia ain't going to hunt. Remember, Marcia ain't going to hunt. Remember, Marcia don't even like doing nothing outdoors. Marcia don't have no animalistic instincts. Marcia ain't hunting. She don't want to do nothing outdoors at all. So I don't see her putting on a real big hunt. Marcia's like, you know what? You see this body right here. You see these looks in this body. Let me tell you, I draw a man onto me with this body because Marcia got a nice figure. And she says, that's how I capture men, with his body and his figure. I ain't doing all that hunting you want, Tony. Marcia ain't going to do that. She says, I come out and hunt when I feel safe. Marcia is all about being safe. She don't like to do nothing outdoors. She don't like to be assertive. She don't like to, approach men or do anything. Marcia likes the safe route, everything indoors, with safety and security all around her. Marcia, like, I don't like to take no risk, none whatsoever. No risk, no risk, no risk. And so, you know what? Love is a risk. And Marcia's like, I don't take them. I don't take risks. And then we had this next date, which was a group date. And it was, who was on there? It was Jonique, Tony, Mark Anthony, and Jeffri. And Mark Anthony pretty much laid it out clear that the only reason I'm on this date is because I really want to go out with Jeffri again. And I'm bringing Tony as my wingman. And I'm going to invite Jonique along because I need Tony as my wingman, because really what I'm here for is to go out with Jeffri. People, I'm really starting to wonder. I've been talking about how Mark Anthony really ain't interested in Jeffri, but let me tell you, if he's not really interested in Jeffri, then he is acting really, really good, because I'm telling you, Mark Anthony is all up on Jeffri. He got googly eyes for Jeffri. He's always touching Jeffri, kissing on her and hugging on her, even when the cameras are not in his face. And I know we see this little clip where he's tonguing down Mercedes. And I want to know why we've never seen a date between Mark Anthony and Mercedes. I don't know why we can't see the chemistry between Mark Anthony and Mercedes, because I really want to be able to juxtapose the chemistry I see with Mark Anthony and Mercedes with the chemistry I see between Mark Anthony and Jeffri. So I can see if Mark Anthony's with Jeffri is just lust, and if it's the same thing with Mercedes. I need to see the two. I need to see how Mark Anthony works with different women. And I don't like that we have seen a 50 million dates with Jeffri and with a Mark Anthony, and we haven't seen one-on date with Mercedes and Mark Anthony. But if I'm just going off of what I see with Mark Anthony and Jeffri, he is all up on her. And I don't know if I should just call it just lust. Maybe he really is intrigued with Jeffri, because let me tell you, I can see how a lot of men are intrigued with Jeffri, because Jeffri is a professional. Jeffri knows how to run game, and it draws people in. It does draw people in. Just like Tony draws women in, Jeffri draws men in because her game is strong. I'm telling you, she's a professional. Her game is strong. And what I'm wondering is this what's drawing in Mark Anthony? Is the game what is drawing in Mark Anthony? Because when you look at their lives, they don't line up. They don't line up. Jeffri's everyday life of oatmeal and toast for her 5-year-old that she was talking about with Blue, her life with 3 kids doesn't line up with Mark Anthony's life. But if you just had Jeffri all by herself on dates, in her yoga pants, then maybe that's fun. That could see how that would be fun for a lot of men. But he was all up on Jeffri, talking about how she looked good in her white outfit. And Jonique was like, Mark Anthony ain't here for me. She knew right away that Mark Anthony wasn't there for her. And Tony isn't really having no real interest in Jonique either. But let me tell you, Jonique has some good answers. She knew how to articulate what she wanted in a man. Everyone at that table was impressed. Even Jeffri was impressed. Jeffri was like, she got a different kind of game. But let me tell you something about Jonique. Jonique needs to learn how to smile. She needs to learn how to smile. She needs to learn how to lighten up a little bit. Jonique is only 30 years old, but let me tell you, she reads like she's almost a 40-year-old woman, which is nothing is wrong with it. Jonique needs an older man because Jonique is actually a very mature in the area. When she speaks and she articulates herself, what she wants, her reasoning behind it, I can see how she could be a CEO of what I don't know. Is she running her own software company? Jonique is smart. Now that answer she gave last week about turning up and drinking Hennessy and all that, she need to get rid of that. So I know there's this fun side of Jonique. She needs to let that side out more on these dates she goes on, because Jonique shows up on these dates serious, like she's for a job interview. I would hire her because she knows all the right things to say. But I don't know. I never see no fun side of Jonique. I don't see Jonique laughing, having fun, or smiling. And I think that warm side of Jonique needs to come through more on her dates. It really does. But Jonique might need an older man. She's only 30, but Jonique needs to start a dating man about 40. Maybe a man of 40 or 41, doesn't have any kids, wants kids, and wants to give her all the things she talks about, and who wants a woman who is more serious, because he's tired of dating women who are immature. Because a lot of women don't have the maturity of Jonique at 30. A lot of women don't, but she does. And so I think she needs to date older men. I think she needs to let the fun side out a little bit more. I think she needs to smile a whole lot more. She needs to laugh a whole lot more, and add in a little bit of a lightheartedness, and learn how to flirt. She doesn't know how to flirt at all. She needs to watch Jeffri on how Jeffri flirts, and she needs to learn how to flirt, because there's no, I don't see Jonique flirting. When's the last time you saw Jonique flirt with anyone? She's got to get answers, but she doesn't know how to flirt. She needs to learn how to flirt. So after the group lounge, after all the group dates, they went to the group lounge, and everybody was like, nephew Tommy came in. I want everybody to clap for him again. Oh, I better be hard to be married to nephew Tommy. Does the wife have to clap every time he comes into a room? Does the wife have to get up and do cheerleading flips every time he walks? Because he needs an applause every time he walks into the room. I don't know. It's a little bit of too much. I don't know how he should come in. I don't know, whatever it is, but the applauding and the cheering, it's too much, people. Come up with something new next season. I know this show listens to the audience, but they need to listen to this part about us. We are tired of cheering for nephew Tommy every time he walks into the room. And I know it's got to be weird for the men cheering for another man all the time. Maybe for the women it's okay, but I know men do not want to continuously be clapping for Tommy all the time, every time he walks into a room. But anyway, let me go on. So they had a group lounge, and I'm going to have to read my notes on this about what happened. Oh, we see a little bit in the background. We do see a Mark Anthony with his arm around Mercedes for the first time. Like I said, we don't even see any dates with them. We never even see them in the same space. For the first time, I see Mark Anthony at the lounge with his arm around Mercedes. I'm like, I don't know why we haven't seen none of this. Then we see Morgan over there talking to Lyndon. And we see Tony over there taking a shot, talking about, Morgan over there buttering up Lyndon. But there ain't no chance for no Lyndon, not when I'm in the race. Go ahead, Tony the Tiger. Go ahead with your growl. Ow, ow. Tell us what you're working with. But Tony, you might got it wrong. Morgan may not be interviewing Lyndon for the number 1 spot. Morgan might be interviewing Lyndon for the runner-up spot, the side piece. So when you say Lyndon doesn't have a chance, he may not have a chance as the number 1, but he might definitely have a chance as a side piece. Tony, you better keep your eye on Morgan. I'm telling you, you better keep your eye on Morgan. You're thinking that there's only 1 spot in Morgan's life, and there might be more than 1 spot. Remember, she's the girl that ain't never been in love. Morgan knows how to be with a man and never fall in love with him and be with him for a year and a half. That's a skill, because most women be falling in love within 4 or 5 months. She can go a year and a half. Tony better respect Morgan. He better respect Morgan's game. He better respect her game. And then you see Anthony and SueAnn. There ain't no real conversation. It's going nowhere. We find out that a lot of men think SueAnn is stuck up. They say SueAnn is stuck up. She thinks she's above everybody else, and a lot of people don't like her. So you find out that a lot of men don't really like SueAnn, and I guess it seems fitting then that SueAnn and Blake would get together because I think everybody thinks that Blake is kind of stuck up, and now they think SueAnn is stuck up. Maybe that's how they got together. And maybe that's why Jeffri doesn't like either one of them. But when they mentioned that Andre was coming back, the S-Curl man was coming back, they said they kept showing Jeffri's facial expression. And let me tell you, Jeffri's facial expression was like she didn't want him coming back. Be honest with you. When you look at her facial expression, it doesn't look like she's happy that Andre is coming back, which I thought was weird because I thought she liked Andre. She actually looks like she doesn't want him coming back. But then in her confessional, she talks about how happy he was coming back and how she couldn't stop thinking about him. Jeffri was doing her calculations. Jeffri was like, dang, I know how to fit into everybody's life. Now I got to go back and fit into Andre's life too. Because like I told you, Jeffri becomes the woman she needs to become in order to fit in the man's life. So now Jeffri's wheels are turning. She's like, I'm figuring out how to fit in Mark Anthony's life. I'm figuring out how to fit in Blue's life. And now I got to go back and figure out how to fit in Andre's life too. I got to become a third woman. I got to become a third woman. Not I got to just be myself. I got to become a third woman. And Jeffri's nervous. This does not look like a joy and happiness. This is like a nervousness to me. She's nervous. But when Andre did come back, he had a little heat for Mercedes, and he told Mercedes, why didn't you check on me when I had COVID? Boy, because you didn't have no COVID. Mercedes was like, out of sight, out of mind. I didn't know I was supposed to check on people who dropped out of the whole game. I thought that was unfair, Andre. I really did. Because if you so-called said you had COVID and you're dropping out, why I need to still be calling you? I didn't know you was coming back. Now, this might have been some ploy of the cast, the producers. It sounds like a lot of people knew Andre was coming back. In fact, people was telling me down in my comments he was coming back. But Mercedes like, I didn't know that, so why should I keep calling you? So I thought it was wrong for him to call out Mercedes saying she didn't reach out to him. But Andre was like, well, maybe Mercedes is just a sort of closed off. Because the truth of the matter is, Mercedes really has friend zoned a lot of men in this episode. Who does Mercedes really like besides Mark Anthony? And we haven't even seen any of their dates. So I could see a lot of men saying that Mercedes is closed off because we really haven't seen Mercedes gel with any man except she keeps talking about Mark Anthony, but yet we never see any Mark Anthony dates. It is kind of weird, y'all. But Mark Anthony found himself on the bottom for a lot of men, too. A lot of people was saying no to Mark Anthony. Jonique was no to Mark Anthony. SueAnn was no to Mark Anthony. There was a lot of people. Who else? Cynthia. Did Cynthia say no to Mark Anthony? Yep. She was like he wasn't ready. So he got a lot of no votes this time. Mark Anthony sure did. And, of course, Blake is in the bottom again, as always. People didn't like Blake. And then this whole thing between Jeffri and Blake and SueAnn, I'm going to tell you, Jeffri keeps saying that SueAnn is and Blake are obsessed with her, but honestly, I think Jeffri's a little bit obsessed with SueAnn too, because she keeps bringing up her name and dragging her into it, even when SueAnn isn't even saying anything. SueAnn isn't even saying anything. I just think the two don't respect each other because I think they just operate on different realms. I just think Jeffri operates completely different in the world, and SueAnn doesn't respect the way that Jeffri operates, and Jeffri actually doesn't respect SueAnn. SueAnn really is about intellect and lots of other things, and Jeffri doesn't respect that. She doesn't respect that, and Jeffri doesn't respect Jeffri's style of getting men, which is attraction, drawing men in, seduction. SueAnn isn't necessarily good at that. She tries to be good at it. She was trying to do it with Blake, but it doesn't come off well. And Jeffri really is good at the whole seduction dance. And Jeffri actually isn't good with intelligent conversation. So they both don't like each other because I think it's because they both, in a lot of ways, are envious of parts of each other. I think Jeffri really is envious of SueAnn's intelligence and her class, because I wouldn't say that Jeffri's a classy person. I think Jeffri is trying to come off like she's classy, but she really isn't. I think she's jealous of SueAnn. SueAnn really is a polished, classy, and intelligent, and I think Jeffri's jealous of that or envious of it. Let's not say jealous because that's different things. I think she's envious of it because I think it's something that she would want. And I think when Jeffri is with this little mousy voice, in a lot of ways, it's her also trying to become that way. And I also think that SueAnn is envious of Jeffri's ability to draw men in. Sort of men are attracted to this animalistic quality. Jeffri has the skill of seduction, and SueAnn actually doesn't have that. She doesn't know how to seduce a man with her eyes or her words, and I think she's envious about that with Jeffri. So I think they clash because in a lot of ways they're just envious of each other. They really are. If they really thought about it, they could both teach each other something. If they really were good friends, Jeffri could help SueAnn with her game of seduction, and then SueAnn could help Jeffri come off a little bit more polished, a little bit more classy, a little bit more intertwining more into the conversation that's a little bit more intelligent conversation, because all Jeffri ever talks about is, oh, what do I need to do to get you? What I need to get you in my web. It's interesting to watch. But in the end, nobody went home. They all talked about who was at the bottom, who was at the top, but no one went home and no one was eliminated. I don't know if someone's going to get eliminated at the beginning of the next episode. But anyway, that was it, y'all. What you think down below, and I will talk to you later. Bye.